the Boston Celtics are keyed in. We talked about it on the pregame show. I was looking at the fact, Horford left for a minute, but Marcus Smart, Tatum, Brown, Horford, that group, they played together 5 seasons now. They know each other so well.
Chemistry.
In all facets of the game.
Yep.
They know everything about each other, where they want the spots,
how to get each other going.
The intricacies of the game, where in Sacramento you got a lot of talented guys with high IQ still learning each other.
Still fresh.
And so you just see that play. It's a team that went to the finals last year, and Jason Tatum is, in my opinion, the front runner for MVP right now.
Fair.
But I think why I'm disappointed is just because they came out tonight sloppy as S. And they finished sloppy in Atlanta, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, they were missing shots and maybe mental fatigue, back-to-back in Atlanta. I get it. Second half of back-to-back, mental miscues. They had 8 turnovers in the fourth quarter. But you get a day off. You're in Boston. First quarter, they got 10 turnovers. And I felt like a lot of them were just not crisp passes
lazy
whatsoever.
Yeah, and when I say lazy passes, right? They weren't like being lazy out there. It wasn't the effort that was being put into the pass. You just had to make more crisp passes against a better team. Not even a better defensive team, but a longer team, a good team, a team that's played together. And so those passes were super annoying. Obviously, shots still weren't falling. It was their lowest scoring first quarter this season with only 22 points for the Kings. But it wasn't even about that for me. It's exactly what you said. It was the turnovers. It was the attention to detail and getting in that hole early again.
And that's what was frustrating. I mean, you talk about trying to get it over the defense. There was one play where Herter had Sabonis wide open, a little pick and roll action. It was beautiful. He overshot the pass and it went out of bounds. And it just felt like there was a ton of those. There were 10 in the first quarter alone. And all of a sudden you dig yourself a hole. You're down 16 points. And that's just so hard to get back in the game in a place in Boston where they have one home loss the entire season. It's a team that's obviously pretty locked in. Winners now of 11 of their last 12 games. They're rolling right now. And so I felt like that hurt them so much early in this game. And the other thing with the offense is people, I don't think, remember this enough. When you have those live ball turnovers, when you have those miscues, you put your defense in a bad spot. On our pregame show today, we were talking about some of the good defensive moments there in the second half against Atlanta. And there is a few really great moments where you're starting to see signs.
The team defense, togetherness, yep.
I mean, coming into tonight on the season, they were 25th in defensive rating. Last 10 games before tonight, they went to 21. The last 5 games before tonight, they were up to 18th. In the NBA. So not great by any means, but the one way you can hurt your defense is by having those type of turnovers. And that hurt them so much tonight, Morgan.
Well, it hurt them too because the Celtics did a much better job, especially as of late, capitalizing on those turnovers and hitting transition threes and just making them pay for being sloppy. And there was times in this game too that the Sacramento Kings had those moments where it was a swing play in their favor, but then still couldn't keep things consistently going in their way.
On the bright side, after that first quarter where they were down 36-22, ended up getting down by as many as 16 points, the response was there. And I didn't know when this was going to happen again, but this is what we always talk about with guys in the rotation. You never know when you're going to get called again. And tonight, it was KZ Okpala.
Love it.
Started the first 3 games for Sacramento, then plays like 6 minutes in that's what his average is, 6 minutes a night when he even played, which he wasn't playing unless he came in at the end of a quarter for 12 seconds to defend something. They put him in tonight. The guy stayed ready. He ends up giving them some big-time minutes off the bench, plays nearly 21 minutes in this game, and he was active. He made life a little more challenging. Tatum made some shots on him because Tatum's a great player, but he made some plays out there, and I felt like that second unit all of a sudden got them back in the game. Davion was doing some things. Malik Monk was doing some things early. They were able to cut that lead big time. And KZ played some big time minutes.
KZ did a fantastic job, especially when he had to guard Jason Tatum, a guy that is not only an incredible scorer, but can also find teammates as well, be that playmaker out there. And for KZ to lock him down at times or take away his vision as much as he could was exactly what this team needed when they were getting killed. And it wasn't even the Celtics killing them at first. It was them doing it to themselves. So that's why it was great to see the energy and that spark come off the bench.
And that's hard sometimes to stay engaged, especially if you're a guy like KZ who did start the first 3 games of the season, then you're out of the rotation, not playing.
Yep.
Mike Brown's giving you these random-ass minutes at the end of quarters. Credit to him for staying engaged and then coming out and trying to have an impact. He impacted the game with that type of energy. I thought Davion did some nice things. And they all of a sudden, it started looking like the Kings again. It was like, hey, they're getting some stops. There's some decent defense being played out there. Then they were knocking down some shots, right? 40 points in that second quarter. They go to halftime. They're down 2. And you're like, well, that was a great reset.
It
The
was.
terrible first quarter, and you got back in the game by halftime. It was great.
Yeah, I felt that. I felt very encouraged. I was like, okay, this team knows how to rally back. And it wasn't like, oh, the Celtics are just screwing this one up for themselves. It was the Kings and their energy and their spark and their bench, their depth that was getting them back in this one, right? Again, shots not falling for so many guys that you're seeing shoot so well on a consistent basis night to night, but it wasn't about them. It was about the way that they were playing basketball to get themselves into this one.
Playing aggressive, too.
Yep.
They got the Celtics into some foul trouble. Brown picked up his 3rd foul in the second quarter. Smart was frustrated going into the second half. And then coming out in the third quarter, it was like, they're getting some stops the first few possessions, right? And then it's like, wait, the Kings have the lead? The third quarter was fun for a while. I felt like
For a while.
Well, you had Smart picking up the flagrant foul on Fox when he contested the 3 and it came in Fox's landing zone. Fox goes to the line, hits all 3 free throws, and then the Kings end up getting their largest lead of the game, 82-76. They then were up 89-84.
And that's when things happen?
Yeah, I actually messed that up.
Okay.
That's when Boston went back up. But they were up 82-76. But then Boston goes on this unbelievable run. The final 3.5 minutes of the third quarter, when you need to close and get some momentum going in the fourth, they absolutely fell apart.
Dude.
Like, what happened?
And what was crazy, too, is that Mike Brown wanted to see them play through it. They couldn't do it, so he calls timeouts, right? Then they weren't responding out of these timeouts. Like, things just got worse and worse. And I didn't even know what to do in that moment. I felt pure frustration, so I can only imagine what it feels like playing in this game and having that just feeling dominated in those final few minutes of that quarter. It was absolutely atrocious basketball by the Sacramento Kings in the way that they were playing, but the Celtics also did a fantastic job capitalizing on that.
So it ended up being 84-79 at the 3:12 mark of the third quarter.
Okay.
Kings are up. The Kings scored 20 points the rest of the ballgame.
Jeez.
After the 3:12 mark of the third quarter, they scored 20 points the rest of the way. And I think some of the stuff, like Boston, I mean, they've been a good defensive team. They're not as good as they were last year, especially without Robert Williams, who's anticipated he may come back around Christmas. But they still have guys who know how to play defense, right?
Yeah.
Like Marcus Smart, Defensive Player of the Year. Brown's a good defender. Tatum, they rotate well, play some good team defense.
Jaylen Brown, yeah.
But man, the Kings just settled. They settled. Like Mike Brown wants paint touches. And what do we see when the Kings offense is in a roll? They're getting paint touches. I don't care that they miss shots, but what I don't like is when guys just get the ball on the perimeter and they go, oh, I'm just going to launch a shot. And I got to be honest, the guy who is probably the biggest culprit of this tonight was De'Aaron Fox. He settled way too much from outside.
Well, Celtics didn't take them out of their game there either. You're exactly right. It was the Kings that started just to play a different way and didn't be aggressive and be assertive and go to the rim with authority. It was like, all right, we're going to settle for this outside, or we're going to settle for this midi, or I'm not even going to have confidence going up for this floater. And it was super frustrating seeing at times, but you talked about the paint touches. That's exactly what Mike Brown was saying even after the game, talking about, yeah, we were getting the paint touches when things were flowing and things were good in our offense, and we had some sort of pace out there. But then when things weren't going well, it was no paint touches, and the flow, the pace of this squad was just non-existent.
And then when they went to the post with Sabonis, I'm like, there's no movement whatsoever. Like, Sabonis is just going to go one-on-one. None of the guys around are doing anything off ball. What is happening? And so, at some point you want, and I hope this is a big lesson for them tonight, is like, yeah, you can have a 3-minute stretch where maybe things aren't going right, maybe. But for a team like Sacramento, this is not all rookies playing right now.
Yeah.
It's not just a super young team. Like, you have guys who've been in the NBA for a minute. That's where you guys need to like figure it out, come together and go, we need to do this. Sabonis, speak up. Fox, whoever it is, you have to be vocal and change it. And then if you play your game, you live with the results.
Yeah. And I think we saw at times too, Sabonis bring guys together and try and talk through it. And that's what I liked. It didn't seem like anyone was sulking, even in the really bad times when I was sulking while watching this basketball game and I felt depressed at times. And then I had to remind myself and have a different type of perspective. And the perspective was, okay, you're playing one of the best teams in the NBA. You're playing an MVP candidate as of right now. And on top of all of that, you're still battling and staying in this one at first until they started obviously really taking that lead.
And that's why it was so disappointing from that 3-12 mark or whatever it was on, where you only score 40 points the rest of the way. In the second half, Morgan, Sacramento was outscored 58-42. They shot 13 of 42 for 31%, 5 of 18 from 3. They had 6 turnovers that turned into 13 points. On the night, Sacramento had 18 turnovers that turned into 27 points. And now we're talking about 3 straight games where they had 20 in Memphis, 20 turnovers, found a way to win. Atlanta, 19 turnovers. You lost that game. And then tonight, when you're that close to the 20 mark, then you better be hitting all your shots.
Yeah.
And the Kings were turning the ball over, not playing their game. And then when you finish on the night, 9 of 36 from 3, Keegan did not make, he made a 3 late in the game. They kept him in. He was 1 of 6. Kevin Huerter, who's been lights out, was 0 for 6. Sabonis 0 for 2. Malik Monk 1 of 6. Those numbers are going to crush you. Fox 3 of 9.
Yeah, I think this loss for me was really, it was most frustrating, not because the shots weren't falling. It wasn't frustrating because Celtics went on a really, really big run where the Kings just couldn't stop them. It was the hole that they dug themselves in the beginning of the game and then how they started losing it in that third quarter. That was the most frustrating.
Yeah, and it's not about losing to a good team. It's about how you lose, and they did not play the right way. Flat out, they didn't play the right way for the majority of the game. And if you're going to be a good team, if you're going to try to be competitive in this Western Conference that you can tell is just insanely competitive right now, then you have to play the right way, especially against these elite teams. You can't have mistakes like they did tonight. And that's why I was frustrated with how this road trip ended. You know, the Atlanta game, it's like that one was irritating from the standpoint that it's like Atlanta tried to give it to them. I felt like the Kings were like out of gas. This game, it was like what went wrong? What, you were up, you were feeling it. I felt like there was a momentum shift in the game with some of the calls.
Totally.
Tatum was frustrated. I mean, we saw some technicals
Grant
tonight.
Williams.
Hey, let's give it up. Mike Brown got technical.
Dude.
First one of the season.
It was great to see. And it was
on a terrible call. Fox gets tripped.
That was
no
it.
call. So Brown gets teed up. Then Fox got a technical as well, his second of the year. We saw Grant Williams get a technical. Who else got a technical tonight? Then
Jaylen Brown?
Jaylen Brown got one. So 4 technicals in the game. And then, Tatum was irritated. And then I felt like he got going after that. I was like, Jason Tatum is awake and he is ready to go. Let's see his second half numbers. Tatum in the second half, 14 points, 4 of 4 shooting, 2 of 2 from 3, 4 of 4 from the line. He had 6 rebounds, 3 assists in the second half.
When he's locked in, it is so frightening. It's so scary. He is such a good player. And I can't even sit here and tell you this is how you stop him. This is how you break down his game and throw a double at him. Take away, it doesn't matter if you take away his vision. He will shoot muscle memory. Like his length will still create this beautiful shot. I mean, his ability to get to his spots, but to also find his teammates, just an incredible basketball player.
Kings held to 104 points. I feel like this road trip, the offense has had some really tough moments. The end of the Memphis game, right?
Yeah.
Atlanta. And then tonight, only mustering 104 points, shot 41%. We mentioned 25% from three. Boston on the other end, shooting nearly 50%. They knocked down 16 threes. They made the most threes in the NBA this year. Tatum had 30. Brown had 25. That's literally what those two average. I knew they were going to get theirs. I'm not even mad how they play defense tonight against those two guys because they're just great players, and that's what they do. Those are their averages. I think this was more about how Sacramento did not execute their game plan at the end of a road trip, and they got to get their stuff together fast.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I like that we don't have to question their effort and everything that we've seen in their 7-game winning streak as a fluke or anything like that. It's how are they going to respond? How are they going to learn from another loss and a different type of loss like this? And I think when you look at their shooting, you can also talk about, okay, are they tired at the end of a road trip? Is it their shot selection? And I would go more toward, yes, it's trying to take the first shot and not the best shot and not working your way into the paint and then moving the ball around to get that wide open three. And even if you're going to miss that, great. But there's a different type of momentum, a different type of energy when everyone's touching the basketball. But also guys weren't moving without the basketball. There's not a lot of willing cutters tonight. Kevin Huerter still does a fantastic job moving. But that was the other part. It was difficult getting the ball to those open cutters because there's so many long guys on the Celtics. And when you can't get it to them like that, you got to find a new way to gain position. Maybe it's not a backdoor cut. Maybe it's not just slicing through the middle. Maybe it's finding a way to get here and then putting your body on them and really gaining that front position.